when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Australia's best independent news and opinion radio show, The Daily Australian, with Nicola Charles and Jason Olbourne.
Well, hello and welcome to episode 108 of The Daily Australian. This is Tuesday, June the 10th already. My name's Jason Olbourne, back from the long weekend, and I'm joined right now by a sniffly Nicola Charles. Nicola, happy winter and episode 108. Welcome back.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, look, if you guys want me this week at all, this week, it's going to be the rest of the week probably. You're going to have to put up with me being a bit sick, but that's okay. I don't go down lightly, as I said. So I'm fighting through it. Everyone I know in Melbourne is sick. Literally everyone I know is sick. It seems to not be lasting more than a week in the jabbed and the unjabbed. So we'll see. We'll see how we fare, but it's a nasty one. And I thought it was only appropriate that something like this get handballed to me on the King's birthday. Jason, I have taken my verbal diatribe to the King on a number of occasions. So perhaps this is his thank you to me.
Well, how about that? Well, the King hasn't done too well himself. We've just learnt this morning from a royal insider that the King's mysterious cancer is apparently incurable. So that is breaking news coming out of newspapers this morning. Just give you the headline right there. Incurable, Palace insider shares heartbreaking King Charles cancer update. There you go. So he won't tell the world what it is, but apparently he's not going to be able to get rid of it. So when he goes, it will be either with or of the mysterious cancer right there. Interesting development in headlines. And we've also learnt this morning that the Deputy Premier of New South Wales, Prue Carr, has announced that she will be taking immediate leave to deal with a breast cancer diagnosis, which is something she's going to have to deal with immediately. She says they've got it early and it is unrelated to her previous kidney cancer that she had that was as late as 2022, that one had been dealt with. And this is independent of that, nothing to do with a secondary cancer in that regard there. But they're falling like flies. Extraordinary story. And she's only a young lady in her 40s.
It's extraordinary how sick Australia has become. It's almost like it was a plan, isn't it, Jason?
Yeah.
Everyone's battling something, everyone's battling something. We found out over the weekend that we'd lost 3 other distant relatives shortly after vaccination, and that another one developed dementia after being my brain's not working today. I've got the fuzzy brain. After being prescribed statins by her GP, she got dementia. So, it's not normal. Okay. If you're someone that doesn't think about how things used to be or want to think about how things used to be, you might just sort of be indoctrinated that this is normal. It's not normal because it's happening to really young people. I'm really surprised how young some of these sick people are. As you say, that lady's in her 40s. And it's amazing to me that no one's questioning it. I feel like we've been under massive attack. I feel like it's been since 2020. I feel like the plan is for this to continue at least until 2030, maybe even 2045, when the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is due to close. And we're being attacked, and no one seems to care too much about that. No one seems to be addressing it. The politicians, the way they blindly go on and talk about the absolute rubbish that they're talking about right now, is extraordinary to me. They're not doing anything about the migrant crime. They've banned the machetes because we all know machetes get up on their own and cause damage. And I posted something this morning and I said, I think it was 7 News in Australia, not far from me actually, a Beaconsfield off-licence bottle shop. A gang of teenagers went in there and stole lots of stuff, and they told the owner, you can't do anything about it. And when 7 News published the video and the stills, they blurred their faces, Jason. And I said in a post, how come when you're a criminal, they said they wanted to protect their privacy. How come when you're a criminal, you get your privacy protected? And yet, people in Australia who walk into a mall or a tennis match or anything else, they're subject to facial recognition, and they're people that have paid or people who want to pay. So, like, explain that to me like I'm five, that criminals get privacy and protection and tax-paying citizens don't.
Yeah, I can't explain it. I don't understand it either. It makes no sense to me that if I want to have my privacy, I'm told, well, bad luck. Just like when I go to a sporting venue and I want to pay cash, I'm told I'm not allowed to. If you go to a venue to watch a show, no cash, so people are allowed to effectively know what I purchase. So therefore, I choose not to purchase if that's the case. I mean, it is all a little bit silly, isn't it, to think that that there are two sets of rules, and of course, it always works that the innocent ones are the ones that always pay, or as my mother used to say, it always keeps the honest criminals out, of which, of course, there isn't any. But that's the point. It's just a ridiculous argument. But yeah, we'll blur the faces because of somehow to do with privacy. It is a great nonsense, but it's this idea that you have to keep to a certain standard, and yet at the same time, it's the same with the LA riots that we're going to get into shortly. We can argue that they're mostly peaceful riots, according to some people, and at the other side, we're going to talk about how the Marines are now coming in after the National Guard. So somehow they're not peaceful at all, but you're meant to believe that they are. And how can you have a mostly peaceful riot, for goodness sake?
Well, it's a riot or a protest. It's not one or the other. It's like people have asked me all weekend, and I've been a bit foggy, but they've been saying to me, why aren't the Australian government doing more about the migrants and the machete crime and all that kind of thing? And it suddenly dawned on me this morning at 4:00 when I was sneezing and couldn't get back to sleep. And I posted that, the reason they don't do anything about, and they don't care about the blurred footage and the machete wielders, and we never hear what happened. And then if they do catch them, which is rare, and they go to court, they get bailed the same day because, DEI, we have to bail them because they don't know in the Democratic Republic of Congo, perhaps, that, what our laws are like in Australia. So maybe you should have explained it to them when they arrived. And I've deducted that it's because, Jason, these criminals, the criminal acts, there was another one in a gas station in Melbourne last night. Guy was filling up his car and someone came at him with a machete. He was really badly hurt. Because the crimes are not against the government, because the crimes are against us, the government are like, whatever, we'll ban machetes. We'll make it look like, we give half a crap. We'll ban machetes, but we're really not doing anything about the people, and we're going to keep bringing them in. But the reason is they're not going up against the government. So the real criminals are the people that write stuff on Facebook posts, that the government's making a bad decision about pandemics or the climate hoax or something like that. So it's just appalling. It's a game of survival, and the government are trying to survive. So anyone who's not coming up against them, come one, come all, you're all welcome. And any law-abiding citizen that is questioning the government, you're the criminal. It's absolutely appalling. It's disgraceful. And I wonder how much longer we can live in a world where the emperor has no clothes on, Jason.
Yeah, well, we're getting close, aren't we, to a point of no return, and whether or what will be that event that wakes people up for once, and they realise that there's no turning back from that point. So we're seeing these LA riots. They're massive, where we're seeing a 54% support for Trump's actions, but at the same time, the Californian powers that be are doing absolutely everything they possibly can to blame Trump, as they always do, in a situation that doesn't quite make sense. So do we have an insurrection? Is that where we're going here? Is this why the military is coming in? So we're going to get through those details. Also want to bring up headline news today. It's from Bobby Kennedy, that he has ordered a clean sweep of the entire CDC vaccine advisory panel to end decades of corruption. He's removed all 17 members of the CDC's ACIP, citing decades of unchecked conflicts of interest and rubber stamping unsafe vaccines. The ACP stands for the Advisory Committee on Immunisation Practices, the panel tasked with recommending vaccines for the American public, citing long-standing corruption, persistent conflicts of interest, lack of transparency, and a documented history of rubber stamping vaccines without adequate scrutiny. So that is now being changed. That is a big announcement there in terms of what's coming.
You know why he's done it? He's told them why he did it. Because he wants to bring confidence back to vaccines. So that's never going to happen. You can fire all 17 of them and say, look, I've cleaned them out, and all those 17 people are gone. They were just paid workers. They were just, following orders. you can't do this and say you're going to bring trust back to vaccines after what we've just lived through and we're still living through. The reason most people are appallingly sick is because of what they've done over the last 5 years. So how is firing 17 people going to make a difference? I mean, I'm glad he's having a refresh, definitely with the HR. I think that's a good idea. But do you really think, Jason, that he'll bring confidence back to the vaccine schedule in America?
Well, I think you can divide it into three cohorts: those that will never take a vaccine again, those that are coming to that decision that they don't want to take any more vaccines, and then there are those that will take every single vaccine that is presented because they are obsessed and believe that vaccine is a new word that means flawless science and cures for everything, even though they know that the results from COVID vaccines weren't there. So this is a process. This is the part that's so frustrating, is the fact that you've got to watch this process in real time play out in various different components, just like you did with the mRNA that came out the other day, introducing the placebo to be able to redo and retest, etc. Painful as it is, but there will be 30% of society that will line up not only to be the guinea pigs, but to take any vaccine there is. We still know these people. I've got them in my own family. They'll take anything.
The data was just released from Pfizer, not the Pfizer trial, actually Pfizer on the general public, and confirmed that 470,000 Pfizer vaccinated Americans died in a 2-year period. So don't exactly think that's a successful trial. That's more than world wars, and no one's addressing that. We're just punching forward with mRNA, so I'm highly suspicious.
Well, you can only go one way. You can keep pushing it, and at some point the bubble bursts when people say, "Look, I'm not doing that anymore." But at the same time, we live in a world where everything must be seen. Look, if we didn't have to play this optics game, all these politicians would be in handcuffs now. They'd all be locked up. But we have to play the optics game because the general public,
Instead,
otherwise we wouldn't have the yellow.
Scott Morrison got the highest honour Australia can give, Jason.
Of course he did. Well, of course he did. Isn't that the point? This is the bullshit that we have to tolerate. Now, let's see what. Here's a bit of the story here, and this is from Gerard Rennick, who shared it on his social media. So Scott Morrison has credited Australians for their courage and resilience in the face of crises, including the Black Summer bushfires and once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, as he receives the country's highest honour for his leadership. The 30th PM has been appointed a Companion of the Order of Australia, AC, for his eminent service to the country and direction of the national COVID response as part of the King's birthday honours. Well, globalist to globalist, there it is. But Gerard Rennick says Scott Morrison never lost his job, got locked up or got injured by a vaccine. He allowed the premiers to run riots, spent $500 billion of taxpayer money and oversaw a rise of 10,000 deaths before COVID was even in the community. To award him for going along with a contrived narrative is a slap in the face to the many Australians who suffered as a result of his decisions. And there it is. There is the comparison between the reality and the narrative that continues unabated. It's just extraordinary. This at the same time as we only last week saw this particular story. We're no longer recommending the COVID vaccine because the risk of severe illness was extremely low over the course of the pandemic, and benefits of vaccination are not considered to outweigh the potential harms. So what does the King do? Goes and awards the guy that made that all happen. It's extraordinary, isn't it? And this is where we are today. So this is this optics, this craziness that's going on. But you can bet that the Daily Australian, along with other independent news shows here in Australia, will be showing you the reality, whilst Channel 9, Channel 7, but not The Project. The Project won't be able to go along and support the narrative for much longer, as they've announced that show has finally been axed. And of course, there's been many people having parties over that. Go on.
They just posted The Project, where's the camera, on social media, and they posted a quote from Waleed Ali where he said, "The Project kicked down the door of how news could be done." And I would argue that it wasn't how news should be done. It could have been done, but it shouldn't have been done. And The Project itself said, "You will never meet a nicer person than Waleed Ali, and we are going to miss him so much. Papa Ali, thank you for everything." I don't think that's how the Australian public viewed that show, to be honest, or him.
Just extraordinary, isn't it? Once again, but this is the thing, of course, and now they're complaining. I mean, even Steve Price is complaining. He said, I was only working there for 15 years. What's a guy like, what did he say? Something like, what's a fat old guy like me going to do? I'm like, well, Steve, you're 70 years of age. You're supposed to have retired 3 years ago. If you haven't got your shit together at this stage, well, bad luck. What do you want us to do? Go and have go join the ABC, mate. That's probably where you'd probably.
But it shouldn't be about their jobs. It should be about their service to the general public. Of course, they all start worrying about themselves at this point. I mean, it's extraordinary to me. They had a responsibility to the Australian people. The only reason they've got nice houses and chunky bank accounts is because of the Australian people, because at the beginning people watched them and thought it was going to be a great show, because it kind of took its format from a lot of American shows, didn't it? That's what it tried to be like. What's that awful one in America? The lefty one with Joy Behar on it. What's that one called?
Oh, The View.
The View. It was kind of trying to be like that, I think. But it just went so far left, and it was just so painful to watch and listen to that everyone just turned off eventually. I mean, more than 26 million Australians out of 27 million Australians never watched it. So it wasn't very good, was it?
Yeah, look, pretty tough going when you have to listen to that wokeness. There's only so much you can possibly take. And, of course, the usual anti-Trump vitriol, and, of course, them all hunting in packs, going around the table, all agreeing with each other. And then, of course, the unwatchable, painful Lisa Wilkinson, who joined there as well, to sort of take that component for a little while until she moved on to other things. But, look, it is gone, and that's a good thing. They're going to return. Channel 10 never seems to get it right. They're going to have their 5 o'clock news for an hour, and then from 6 o'clock they're going to have a second hour of news and current affairs and some other unwatchable shows. Then I'm sure they'll wheel out Sandra Sully for the 50th year in a row to able to do the news as usual on that channel. But really, who's watching it at this point? So maybe more people are going the other way. Now, in New South Wales, another local story, Premier Chris Minns has told business leaders that Sydney is without a future if new housing isn't delivered. How about that one? It's an interesting point. He says that he's told business leaders that Sydney is without a future if we can't address a certain issue. Now, what's happened is that the Australian Turf Club, which operates Rosehill Racecourse, has voted to reject a $5 billion plan to redevelop the historic Rosehill Racecourse, replete with 25,000 new homes and a metro station, which would have secured the racing club for 100 years. So addressing more than 100 business leaders at the Shangri-La Hotel on Tuesday, Minns said that despite the advancements made to the livability of Sydney, we will still lose twice as many people as we get. Housing persistently is our biggest challenge, not just in the economy, in terms of intergenerational fairness and equity and giving young people an opportunity. We are losing twice as many people as we gain in a single year. A city without young people is a city without a future, and the leading reason for this is we do not build enough houses. So basically what they wanted to do was use the inside of the Rosehill Racecourse to build high-rises to house 25,000 people. It just seems absurd that would be the case and that is your solution. Meanwhile, in Victoria, they're going a different direction. So they're at war with the NIMBYs over a skyscraper for suburbs plan. So Melbourne's population is meant to reach 9 million people by 2050, so a quarter of a century. From now, that's all we're talking. That's between now and the Sydney Olympics, is where you're going to get 9 million people in 25 years. This is what they're talking about. So a high-rise, an artist's impression of a 17-storey building to be built in Greensborough on that particular site, as you see there on the right. But that's not as far as it goes. Check out the bigger plans. They're talking 49, 50 level, 46 level high rises out there in the northeast of Melbourne. So this is going to make 50 level buildings. Goodness me, you don't even see that in the CBD. They're massive buildings here for Australia. And so this is the solution, which of course makes no sense because this is all about bringing people into the cities without resources, without the infrastructure, and thinking that what you can just put a train line in and suddenly everything's going to work out. Well, that's not quite how it works. And then, of course, how much do you expect people to pay to live in a shoebox in a city when they're already up at $1 million for a 1 or a 2 bedroom unit in some suburbs? What are we going to talk 2050? You're going to need $5 or $10 million to live in a shoebox. Do people really want to live this way, or do we need to look at other ways of regionalisation and moving out?
I think they're doing it primarily for the Chinese migrants. I think there's a lot of Chinese migrants, and I have a one side Chinese neighbor, and they live, like a suburban, semi-rural life like everyone else. But a lot of the young Chinese migrants that are coming primarily for education and stuff, they want to live the way they lived in China, which is these big high rises. And if you go back and look at Shanghai and Beijing, there's a thing on YouTube you can look at, and it shows you the 1980s to now, and you can hit the button and it fast forwards and it shows you all the things going up. The Chinese community actually like that kind of high rise living. I don't think for a second that Australians are going to want to go into that situation. A few, I'm sure. So it's a way to get lots of money out of people because, as you say, they're very expensive. But house them in a very small space. And they're already doing this in Melbourne near Southland Shopping Centre, which is Bayside. Near Cheltenham, they're already going up. You can see them going up, and it's funny because they've got a magistrates court there in the middle of this row of high rises, which is sort of one level, and you've got the little magistrates court and all these high rises going up around it, dwarfing it, and they're just going ahead with it. There's been massive local pushback, BlackRock, people from BlackRock and stuff. So I don't think you're going to stop it, and they're going to accuse you of being anti-progress if you want to stop it. But I think it's strange, and I worry that it will have an adverse effect on property prices in the suburbs and semi-rurally, because if it does cost $1 million or $2 million or $5 million for an apartment, they're not going to let you buy, a couple of acres for that out in the semi-rural suburbs. So it's a bit worrying. The whole landscape is changing, and they really don't care what it's doing to Australians and their ability to get into a home.
The whole housing argument just doesn't make any sense, and thinking that housing stock is resolved by simply cramming more properties into CBDs or the central city makes no sense whatsoever. And for years we've talked about the idea of a fast rail, and there's been some plans that have been shared. I saw them in the local shopping centre. They look fantastic. So imagine having a fast train from Brisbane through to Newcastle, through to Sydney, to Canberra and to Melbourne. And if you could do that, you could literally travel. I worked out it was from Newcastle to Canberra. Was a matter of like an hour on the train. So it was just like a normal local commute to do what would normally be a 4-hour trip. But if you could imagine doing a fast train Sydney to Brisbane in 3 hours, all of a sudden you've got a very different approach. You can start to do anything at that point. But then you think of if you could then put a fast train into certain regional centres, all of a sudden you can commute anywhere. So what is the obsession with this bringing everyone in all of a sudden when you've got other opportunities? And then, of course, you think about the ability of the internet and the ability to work from home, and you could create any form of possibility. Most government departments at that point could be moved to regional areas. Like, you can really open this up if you were really thinking about it.
They want you in 15 and 20-minute cities, Jason. So they don't even want you jumping on a fast train to go an hour on a 4-hour journey like that. They don't want that. They want people staying locally. So I think it's going to be a massive strain on resources. They talk about resources a lot. I'm already noticing in the shopping centres and the car parks and the schools, there's no places. Like, everything's bursting with these migrants. And Australia, well, the Australia I can see isn't ready for it. The infrastructure isn't there. And they're sort of playing catch up. They kind of brought the people in first, and now they're going, gosh, we need these train lines, and we need these homes, and we need more schools. And why would you bring the people in before you have the infrastructure for them? Like, who's running the joint? They're obviously not running it very well. We can see that.
It's the exact opposite of what we've seen with the ghost cities in China. Like, they literally kept production going and have built, high rise after high rise that are empty. They can't fill them. It seems strange, doesn't it? And yet China's not calling for migrants to its country. It's doing the opposite. It's building, but it's depopulating at the same time. Doesn't make much sense at all. Meanwhile, this guy, we know him as Albo, said that the government and democratic institutions, ready for this, including a free media, can meet the demands of global uncertainty despite both facing growing attacks around the world. The day after an Australian journalist was shot with a rubber bullet while covering the street protests in LA, the PM will use an address to the National Press Club to argue distrust can be countered through economic stability and keeping election promises. It is the more corrosive proposition that politics and government and democratic institutions, including a free media, are incapable of meeting the demands of this moment. Some simply dismiss such sentiments, others cynically seek to harvest it. Our responsibility is to disprove it. Well, Albo, how are you going to do that, mate? You're going to have to certainly treat others with respect, the ones that you have treated without such respect. But it seems that that's not the case. So we'll see what Albo is going to deliver when the National Press Club speech goes ahead today.
It's just the old boys club. It's the old boys club. Anyone who behaves and is in a circle, who praises him and his government, you know, the mainstream ones that they pay for all the advertising on, they'll be allowed in the room and no one else will. And they'll start saying things like, thank you for our friends in the independent media for coming. And they're not independent media. You know, he doesn't want any questions that counter anything he says is how it's going to be, you know, because they know that everything they're doing is based on lies and fraud, and they've got no answers for why they're doing it. So no one with half a clue is going to be allowed in those rooms to ask the questions that we really want answered, I'm afraid, no matter what he says.
Of course not. We will no doubt have an ABC on the panel. We might see Tom Connell from Sky News out there. That'll be about as far as you can get, and they'll be straight down the line. Simple questions for Albo to sort of have his PR department go ahead. But we can't be that skeptical. We've just got to sort of let it happen. Well, what we now know is that the LA riots have been a substantial damage, etc. We've seen over the weekend. And strangely enough, we're seeing a lot of Mexican flags and Palestinian flags. I thought it was the United States. So it's a very odd scenario. I'm going to play some clips, etc., as we go along, but we're seeing a real riot between the politicians as well. So I'll run through a couple of stills for you before we show you some interviews, etc. So Richard Grenell, working for Donald Trump, says they planned it with our money. And we learn here that the group instigating many of the riots in LA is Churla, which got $34 million in tax dollars from Gavin Newsom and the California Democrats. At the same time, Stephen Miller, working for Trump, says, what is the correct term to describe foreign nationals waving foreign flags, rioting and obstructing federal law enforcement, attempting to expel illegal foreign invaders? Ezra Cohen, who also is a Trumper, worked for Trump in the previous administration. Let's not forget to add sabotage to the list. And Susan Goss says foreign enemy combatants. Well, that's a pretty interesting scenario. Yeah, exactly right. And that's the point, isn't it? The use of the language there. Meanwhile, Kash Patel says, just so we're clear, the FBI does not need one's permission to enforce the Constitution. Responsibilities to the US people, not to political punchlines. LA is under siege by marauding criminals, and we will restore law and order. I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. And what does Trump say? Paid insurrectionists. Well, is that true? This is an interesting one that popped up. These are some ads listed on Craigslist. Have a look.
Yep.
Looking for the toughest badasses in the city of LA, seeking extremely tough, brave men for new crew. I am building, paid $6,500 to $12,500 per week. You're going to need mental toughness, a level head under pressure, bravery. You face danger head on. You don't hesitate. And there you can see no contract required. There's the area that they're looking for. So are those ads real? We see them pop up from time to time. Just simply extraordinary. They are looking for military except for Marines. We don't work with Marines anymore. That's a long story. Well, of course you don't, because the Marines work for the president. And therefore you would be asking for an actual traitor to be involved here. So look, that's a big deal. Meanwhile, what I'm going to do now is I will play for you a clip of where we are, the latest coming out in terms of the Marines. I'm just looking for the clip to play it for you right now. Here we go. The Marines are coming.
We have breaking news now from the Pentagon. CNN can now report that roughly 500 Marines are being mobilized in response to the protests in Los Angeles.
And this is a significant escalation from President Trump, who had activated National Guard troops over the weekend without Governor Gavin Newsom's consent. In this new move, active duty military members are being deployed as a show of force against U.S. citizens. CNN's Natasha Bertrand is live for us at the Pentagon. Natasha, what are you learning?
Well, Brianna, this is something that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth had previewed over the weekend. He said that if necessary, he would deploy the Marines to Los Angeles to help federal agents with handling the protests there. And it appears now that these Marines, according to our sources, they have been mobilized. These 500 Marines, a full Marine battalion based out of 29 Palms, California, which is just outside San Bernardino, about an hour away from Los Angeles. They have been mobilized and they are gearing up to go and help ICE agents as well as other federal officials deal with these protests in Los Angeles. Importantly, they're going to be bolstering as well the National Guard, guardsmen and women who have been activated in Los Angeles by President Trump. But as you said, it is a significant escalation of the president's use of the military as a show of force against these protesters. It's really not clear, the last time Marines were deployed to help essentially with riot control, though it's unclear at this point just what their actual tasking will be. Typically, if they are deployed to these situations, it is expected that they will operate in much the same way that the National Guard does, doing things like perimeter security, maybe some crowd control. But the rules of engagement here, we are told, are still being finalized, and Defense Department lawyers are also looking at the kinds of rules of engagement these Marines will have as they encounter protesters possibly on the streets of Los Angeles. But again, this coming at a very, very tense moment with the governor of California suing the Trump administration over, of course, the deployment of the National Guard by President Trump against his will there in California.
Extraordinary.
See, Jason, how is that possible that you've got a state governor, Newsom, taking legal action for decisions made by the President of the United States? Right there, that report is extremely suspicious, right? Extremely suspicious. One of them wants to adhere to the Constitution, the Kash Patel Trump side, and the other side doesn't care about the Constitution. He just cares about his own power in the state, right? And he doesn't want them deployed because he doesn't want that broken up. That's politically expedient for them. That's why they want that to happen. And I do believe they were paid. And, it's interesting that it said no Marines, right? Because the Marines are being deployed to break up the riots. So they don't want a situation where it's Marine versus Marine. The Marines are the best of the best. So whoever's been sent there or paid to go there, they want to know that their Marines are better than them. The whole thing stinks to me. And LA's been used in this kind of riot scenario before. But you know what? Sit up and pay attention, Australia, because if they're doing it there, they can do it here too.
Yeah, indeed. And this is the frightening part, isn't it? Because it creates some sort of blueprint. And what we've seen here in Australia is that there's no holding back in terms of trying to find alternate weapons, the whole machete idea, and what's it going to become next? Some other hardware tool or something like that. And it's interesting, isn't it, who is calling out the Constitution? Because now you see a whole lot of projection going on. This is Nancy Pelosi just coming out just a little while ago. The Trump administration's escalation and provocation in California inflames tensions and incites violence. Not quite sure how that works. Now, the president of the US said he would arrest a sitting American governor just for disagreeing with said actions. This is a hallmark of authoritarianism on the road to tyranny, and all Americans should be shocked and appalled by the president's blatant disregard for our constitutional system. The American people must be able to exercise their constitutional right to lawfully and peacefully protest. It is essential that we shine a bright light on the unlawful tactics of the Trump administration so that freedom of speech prevails. Well, that doesn't quite make sense.
She's just showed her criminality because she said that he was going to have Gavin Newsom arrested for disagreeing with the actions. Well, so he should, right? So she's wrong. Trump is correct. Because Gavin Newsom, who is Gavin Newsom? What, he's running California now like his own private cult, like the Church of Scientology, like he's the big king down there in California. That's not how that works. That's not how that works. It's the United States of America, not the individual states of America, because chaos will reign if that's the way it's going to go. Saying that, if California wanted to become, I lived in California for 7 years. If California and its awful inhabitants really want to become separate from the United States, Trump should let them. Apparently the San Andreas Fault, when it finally cracks, is going to separate California from the rest anyway, and it will float off into the sea.
Well, It could certainly happen. Many people are thinking that that's the case. Look, just more breaking news. We've just learnt now that they're going to send in another 2,000 National Guard into the situation as well, on top of the Marines. Now, the point I'm looking for here is, I'm just going to try and find the graphic for you.
Well, who are the rioters, Jason? Who are they?
Well, this is why it's so interesting what's really going on. Who exactly are they? So whilst we're doing that, what I wanted to show you, that this is no longer a peaceful demonstration. This is now an unlawful gathering. That's what I was trying to find for you. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play you a clip, or a set of clips, just to show you what's going on. So this is a Mexican telling off Mexicans. Take a look. An unusual clip, but let's have a look.
So let me get this straight, just so I could clarify it. You don't want to go back to Mexico. You're protesting to stay away from Mexico. But you're waving the Mexican flag, and you're waving it with pride. You're waving it in the United States, the country you're trying to stay in, the country you don't want to leave. But yet you're waving the Mexican flag with pride. Okay. That seems normal to you? That seems logical? That's not stupid at all? None of that's stupid. All right. You guys are an embarrassment to the Mexican culture and to the United States culture. You guys are an embarrassment to everybody around you, and you should be ashamed of yourself. Do better.
Look, I've never had a problem with flags. If you're Irish and you're in Australia and you fly the Irish flag, maybe next to the Australian flag, or Italian or Greek or British, because the Union Jack is just so cute, even though it represents lots of blood. I've not got a problem with flags per se, but the way they're being used here is what's called, there's a name for this in America. They're called transplants, right? So it's not just referring to Mexican people. In fact, it usually, when I was there, rarely referred to Mexican people. It's people that come from other cultures, and we're seeing that here in Australia now. And they come to another country in the world, and they want to transplant all of their culture from their original country in the new country. So they call them transplants, and they want to turn it basically into a little version of where they came from, which begs the question, why? If it was so great, why did you leave? Yeah, weird.
Yeah, exactly right. What I was looking for was the headlines was the LAPD has declared a citywide tactical alert for all of LA as the situation continues to escalate, and have also declared an unlawful assembly at Alameda Commercial in downtown LA. The crowd was given 10 minutes to disperse, with a huge crowd another block away getting close to the freeway. I'll give an example of, again on video, of what we saw earlier. This is an example of attacks being made on officers. Just let me locate that for you. There's just so many here. I'll play for you now.
Is this the officers over here? Yeah, they're going to zoom in right now. There's officers there. Now, where are they going? Look at this. Look at it. Look at how... Oh, they're throwing stuff at the officers. People are throwing stuff at the officers off the bridge, I think. Look. Stuff is getting thrown at the officers. It's very poorly planned, because the officers had to go back under the bridge. And the officers they're walking next to the traffic. This is so chaotic. It's dangerous for the officers to even be walking among the cars, civilian cars. That guy's directing traffic. It's just chaos. It's just chaos. Okay, so I think the officers have held up traffic. At least these cars are getting out of there. Get those cars out of there.
Okay, so this is interesting where it's happening, Jason, right? So that's downtown LA next to the 101 freeway, right? So there's nothing downtown except poverty and homelessness, loads of homelessness. There's no nice apartments, there's no homes, there's nothing like that. There's a bus terminal, there's a Supreme Court, there's a High Court, and there's some commercial buildings. But there's no suburb, there's no life. There's just the downtown, which is really trashy, and then the bridge and the 101 freeway. So it's away from Hollywood, it's away from Pasadena, it's away from Santa Monica. This is not anywhere near where people are. So it feels like a setup to me and it's been placed in the one part of LA that can't really disrupt ordinary people's lives, except that it's spilled onto the freeway. So they're sort of using downtown LA as like a film set to pull this off. I mean, I don't know what's going on, but it feels like a giant plan to me. I know that's a bit of a cliche to keep saying, but it's so engineered. I mean, George Soros has got to be at the back of this somewhere, surely.
We've seen pictures of, the bricks being lined up on the side of the road there, so ready for more rioting.
Okay.
Ironically, we've also heard from the Mexican president. Take a listen to her comments in this clip.
Because if necessary, we will mobilize, because we do not want taxes on remittances from our compatriots in the United States to Mexico.
Cambie tout bono, lo te vides que yo te di todo. Fueron las lavas foros, no vieron yo te loco. Todas las noches que lloras, gastando estas horas, con toda la escuadra que tú traes. Okay, you win, bitch, you're right. Take all of me, taking my breath away.
Because if necessary, we will mobilize, because we do not want taxes on remittances from our compatriots in the United States to Mexico.
Is that just poor English? I don't understand what she said. She said, we don't want access on remittances to our compatriots. What does that mean? Access on remittances. Does that mean she doesn't want them being sent back, or she doesn't want them harmed? I don't understand. Weird.
Well, she's also talking about mobilising. So it's very odd language being used. But again, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But again, what are you getting involved with this for? Because if anything, you should be silent on it at the very least. But this situation that you have people running around Mexico, illegals, flying Mexican flags, burning American flags, is this an invasion? Or is this something else? This is the point here. We're looking at a long-term insurrection finally being called out. And the point of it being that you've got the politicians in the middle, the Democrats. Here's the mayor and her response.
I just have to say that if you dial back time and go to Friday, if immigration raids had not happened here, we would not have the disorder that went on last night. I will tell you that it is peaceful now, but we do not know where and when the next raids will be. That is the concern, because people in the city have a rapid response network. If they see ICE, they go out and they protest. And so it's just a recipe for pandemonium that is completely unnecessary. Nothing was happening here. Los Angeles was peaceful before Friday.
Okay, she's absolutely right. And I'll tell you what else is suspicious as well. I lived in LA for 7 years. Mexican people love living in America. They get jobs. They do a lot of the gardening type jobs, the nannying, the house cleaning, the babysitting. I know it's terrible. But they absolutely love it. And Americans love them. They love, having them as nannies and raising their children. I had a Mexican nanny, Ophelia, raising my children with me. She was wonderful. She potty trained my kids. Now, you've got, firstly, anyone in America, whether legal or otherwise, from Mexico, they're not going to run around in a riot situation getting their faces on camera or even their likenesses on camera. They hide away. They just want to get on with their lives. They're peaceful people. Mexicans are Catholic and very religious and peaceful. While that news report was on, and she's dead right, there was nothing wrong with LA. My ex-husband's in LA. There was nothing wrong in LA a few days ago. You see a form of uniform dressing. Now, we saw this in London when they said that Muslim extremists were charging through the streets, singing their religious chant, and it terrified the hell out of Londoners, right? If you went back and look at that clip, you don't need to do it now, but you would see there are a number of guys in that crowd in black pants and shoes, like black polo necks, green jacket, the same size and shape green jacket, hoods up, and a black thing across their face, right? Antifa comes to mind, or, CIA government plant comes to mind. I'm telling you now, any Mexicans in LA or anywhere in America that are there legally or illegally will not run around baiting the police, especially with Trump as president, because they would assume that as soon as they get collared, they've got a one-way ticket back home. So who are these people? Anyone can run down the street or get a posse like you showed in that advert, Jason, and have any flag. It could be the Palestinian flag. It could be the Israeli flag. It could be the Mexican flag. It could be the Irish flag, right? There's a lot of Irish in America. We don't know that just because they're carrying a flag, they're Mexican. And because they're so covered up, you can't see. I don't believe it. I think Mexicans are going to get blamed for this. And I don't think it's them. It's somebody else.
What we're going to do now is just show you just an example of the type of damage that was going on. So they are Waymo autonomous cars. I think they were Jaguar I-Paces, actually. But yeah, so a series of those being burnt out on the street. There's multiple clips of that as an example of what's going on. We've also seen Black Hawk helicopters flying around. I'll give you that as well.
Again, viewer discretion is advised for some of these scenes unfolding, and one from the sky, one from the ground. You can see them potentially throwing some water bottles at police, and they are saying there's an unlawful assembly as tactical assembly there of law enforcement on the ground. Thousands of protesters now gathering. As you can see, it continue to climb the amount of people, the amount of force, as everyone really in the black gear for law enforcement is local or state. It is not National Guard, although that has been a topic of conversation we followed for quite a bit here on this Sunday after President Trump deploying those troops to the ground there. We've seen them outside of the Metropolitan Detention Area, and you can see right there on your screen, I believe, maybe a law enforcement official being struck by.
Oh, come on, Jason. Come on. It's this is hard to take now in this point in history. Right. We're reporting on absolute bollocks here. Let me tell you why. Firstly, those were autonomous vehicles. You recognize them as Jaguar I-Pace. Oh, well, that's handy, isn't it? That you can drive autonomous vehicles, not off the road onto the footpaths where it was nicer, but in a nice straight line on a street. And they can easily be remote set to implode, right? You don't know that any of those protests imploded those cars. That if they're autonomous, there was no one in them. They didn't need a Molotov cocktail or anything thrown at them. They can just be remotely detonated. So I'm suspicious about the cars. I'm suspicious about that they are chanting, "Shame on you, shame on you." What's the chant? Why isn't the chant, no, down with anti-Semitism, or free Palestine, or, Trump is a right-wing hypocrite, or where's the Epstein files? Shame on you. These are hired people stood there going, shame on you. Shame on you for what? This is Los Angeles, right? The first thing that was said to me when I got to LA and I bought my Volvo, and I'm quite a passionate person, I'm sure the viewers know. They said to me, don't ever get in any road rage incidents with anyone because everyone's got a gun. So you're telling me in that report where they were saying viewer discretion is advised on the news, right? They were saying, oh my God, that's a missile. A water bottle was just thrown at the police. Jason, everyone in LA has a gun. Everyone. So you're telling me that we're watching this unfold on the news, and the worst we've got is chants of shame on you, not political, not religious, and a water bottle thrown at the police, and all hell's breaking loose. God help our species if something really does go down, if you think that's what drama looks like.
Well, there you go. So the LA riots continue. We are watching 2,000 National Guard brought in, 700 Marines, another 500 National Guard, and it continues to play out. You've got Stephen Miller saying that LA is all the proof you need that mass migration unravels societies. You can have all the other plans and budgets you want, but if you don't fix migration, then nothing else can be fixed or saved. So this is a war around illegal immigration, one way or another, and the changing of the guard and the changing of the guard. So whether they're going to argue whether or not. So here we have an example, the LAPD saying the city of Los Angeles on tactical alert. Dispersal order has been issued, arrests being made. To our media partners, please keep a safe distance from active operations. And at the same time, we're also getting Gavin Newsom coming out saying, this is Tommy Tuberville accusing Gavin Newsom of failing to do his job. LA looks like a third world country, anarchists in charge, law enforcement being attacked and the rule of law non-existent. So where are they headed? There is Gavin Newsom. He is saying local law enforcement didn't need help. Trump sent troops away in any way to manufacture chaos and violence. Trump succeeded. Now things are destabilized and we need to send in more law enforcement just to clean up Trump's mess. Meanwhile, LAPD Chief McConnell, when asked if National Guard is needed, this thing has gotten out of control. So which way does it play? Do you go in there to say that we're going to do an ICE operation, which is where this thing started from, and this is the result of it? And are they just going to then just fire off guns at law enforcement at that stage? Is that where it's headed, or is this all just a big joke?
I think it's a big plan. I'm not saying Trump's behind it. I can't believe I'm actually going to say this. I feel like, slapping myself in the face, to be quite frank. But I think Gavin Newsom is right on this occasion. I know he is a loathsome, evil, wef creep. I get that. But something else is going on here. This is obviously part of, because everything's a psyop now, everything's a movie, everything's a trailer. And I think this is to give them a lever to legitimize kicking people out of the country, but they don't need to legitimize kicking people out of the country, particularly Mexicans, the majority of which are massively peaceful, let me tell you. Massively peaceful. They would never do anything like this. And I said, like I said, with the masks and the hoods, these are somebody else. I feel like this was planned. I don't like to think it was planned by Trump, but somebody planned it. Somebody did this. I no longer think George Soros is involved because he likes to go the other way. He likes mass migration. This is something to attack mass migration, but you don't need to, because the crime figures are bad enough. Women getting assaulted and murdered, and this isn't Mexican stuff. Why are you getting the Mexican flag out? These are El Salvadorians. These are people from other countries that are massively dangerous. Someone's trying to reallocate blame here and create another group that's a threat. And I think it's a deflection to something, but I can't work it out because my brain is foggy because I'm sick.
Well, what I'll do now is I'm going to play you a CBS poll, and the numbers might surprise some people.
These protests came to a head in LA over the weekend. A CBS News poll conducted between Wednesday and Friday of last week found positive support for President Trump's deportation efforts. Take a look at this. 54% of Americans said they approved of the president's program to deport people who were in the country illegally. 42% said they believed the program was making the country safer. And as you see on your screen there, 30% said actually it makes the country less safe.
What about that? CBS.
Nice to see a British
54% in support.
Yeah, nice to see a British bloke on CBS. It's a difficult one. Having lived in America, I think illegals are a problem. They're terrible border problems they've got. And Trump wants to fix the border. And of course, Chuck Schumer and all the lefties are saying, there's no money. This is a disaster. We can't fix the border. But as soon as Chuck Schumer and Pelosi and all their lefty mates, as soon as they want to send money for the war in Ukraine or for pharmaceuticals, for pandemics or anything else they want, there's endless money. Spend away. There's no problem. And as soon as Trump wants to build the border wall, then, there's a problem with the money. We can't find it. But Democrats are willing to go into debt for anything. But in Australia, because we're an island in the middle of the ocean, several oceans, that it's not so much illegal migrants, it's legal migrants. It's migrants that the government have allowed in that are not going to contribute anything to society other than robbing liquor stores and stealing mobile phones off teenage kids on buses and home invasions. So what boxes did they tick on their legal migration into Australia? So it's a multi-pronged argument, but you could say, Jason, across the board in this multi-pronged argument, you could say globalization has failed.
And there you go. And this is where it's been headed the whole time, right? Well, in some other breaking news coming out of Iran, it has reportedly submitted its counter-proposal to the United States, pledging to limit domestic uranium enrichment to 3.67% for civilian use if Israel fully destroys its nuclear arsenal and commits to a nuke-free Middle East. That's according to the New York Times.
Well, that's never going to happen.
The Iran Supreme National Security Council warned in a statement that any Israeli attack on Iranian nuclear facilities will be met with a direct response targeting Israel's concealed nuclear infrastructure. Should Israel attack Iran, Iran will immediately strike Israel's secret and undeclared nuclear weapons facilities, which are now known to Iran after receiving classified information about Israel's nuclear program. That was a statement that just came out a little while ago. So the escalation's obviously over there. Meanwhile,
everyone knows about everyone's secret underground. I believe every country has them, the deep underground military bases. They say it's a conspiracy theory. It's not. We've seen the videos. So everyone knows where everyone else's underground nukes are. That's not a good thing. And Iran have come out with a counteroffer. If the counteroffer is to de-nuke Israel, well, we all know that's never going to happen. So it's a pointless counteroffer. But, you can sort of see where Iran's coming from, because it's basically saying to the rest of the world, how come you're allowed to have nukes and we're not? It's a tricky situation. I just don't think it's ever going to work out.
Well, it means that at least, the very least, that there is a discussion. Of course, they're all ambit claims until you get to the table and you can work out what you actually want to do. Meanwhile, coming out of Israel is everyone's favorite teenage agitator. Here she is.
My name is Greta Thunberg and I am from Sweden. If you see this video, we have been intercepted and kidnapped in international waters by the Israeli occupational forces or forces that support Israel. I urge all my friends, family and comrades to put pressure on the Swedish government to release me and the others as soon as possible.
Favorite Greta, that she's going to be made to watch a 43-minute documentary on the Hamas October 7 attack there.
That's hardly hard labor, is it? There's no hard yakka for Greta. I mean, this is hilarious. She's there on a boat, by the way, saying we have been intercepted. So basically, someone's pulled up alongside and said, excuse me, you can't be here. There's a conflict going on just down the road. And she's like, I'm here to free Palestine. I am Greta Thunberg. And they're going, you know what? Come down here, love, and watch this video because there's some horrible shit going on. Now, whether you believe who's right and wrong with Israel and Palestine, and I get held over the hot coals for this on social media all the time. They say, how can you defend this? How can you defend that? I don't defend anyone. I don't agree with bombing of anyone. But what I do say is you can't hold the people of countries responsible for government action. You can't hold the Jewish people responsible for what the government of Israel does. And you can't hold the Palestinian people responsible for what Hamas does. And I don't hold Chinese people responsible for what the CCP does. And please don't hold me and Jason responsible for what Anthony Albanese does, because we don't agree with any of it. That's where I come from. Now, back to Greta Thunberg. She's a lunatic. I cannot believe that she's been wheeled out by the globalists to what? Incite violence, Jason. Why else is she there? Because she's saying, I'm calling on all my compadres, my compatriots, comrades, I think she said. I mean, scary language. And they make sure all this is going all over the world. And it probably is a mass distraction. I mean, people are still waiting for the Epstein lists, aren't they? They are still waiting for more truth about JFK, and they do want mRNA injections removed, and we're removing the people at the CDC who oversaw the mRNA injections, but we're not quite removing mRNA injections. So give us lots to think about. Ping, ping, ping. Give us lots to think about, and we don't keep going back to the crux of the problem. because they don't want to listen to the crux of our problem, because we don't really live in democracies, it seems, anymore, right? Because what do most of the Five Eyes nation wants? They want their countries to unsign from the World Health Organization treaty. If you can sign it, you can unsign it, but they're not going to unsign it, are they? Because they don't care what we think. Thank you so much. Did you say you still want our taxes? Oh, okay. Got it.
It reminds me again, George Christensen's quote from last week: governments aren't there to instruct us, they are there to represent us. So they need to be able to understand that they are not our rulers. And at the same time, these little events that happen that aren't so little, the LA riots, for example, allow government to instruct at that point, because it seems that things get out of control. So how do you keep things in control? This is what makes it so difficult to be able to have what the difference between a lawful protest and an unlawful rally, etc., that can be deemed as something else. And so how do you have the control? Like we saw through COVID, we saw protests, hundreds of thousands of people, even in Australia, down in Canberra. Did it make an iota of a difference? Not at all. And you wonder, therefore, well, what were you supposed to do? Were we supposed to stay there forever? I know that Hoodie cops are hiding from people, saying that he broke it up and sent people home. Well, if people were that into it, why didn't they come back? How come you're blaming Hoodie for sending people home? For goodness sake, something had to be done. Something had to change at that point. And it didn't matter how much pressure you put on. That was never going to change in that situation. And if it was, why aren't the same people back there? People will argue one thing or another against it. So it's a tough scenario when we realise that the system itself is the part that is broken here. It doesn't matter how much pressure you put on. They just keep riding it out and changing and deflecting. And one would hope that what's happening in LA will be a catalyst for some genuine change. Whether or not it's going to be that case or not, I can't tell you. We'll have to wait and see.
Downtown LA, where nothing really happens except there's a freeway, some courts, and some homeless people. If you told me it was in the heart of Beverly Hills, or it was in Pasadena, or it was in Santa Monica, I think, whoa, something's really kicked off in the burbs, right? Something's really kicked off in some important places in LA. But that place is already used as a film set for so many movies. I'm just very suspicious. Perhaps I'm just getting really old and bitter, Jason, but I'm suspicious of a lot of things that's going on. I'm suspicious of all these machete-wielding migrants, legal migrants, we're told in Australia. Apparently they passed the test. Come in with your big knives. It was so funny as well. Like the second that the unelected Jacinta Allen said, we're banning machetes, and all of the sheep politicians said, good idea, ban machetes. The next story that came out in Melbourne was that the attacker was using an axe, because we all know that criminals listen to which weapons have been banned. Axes are in, machetes are out.
No. Isn't it crazy that you could think that that's going to solve a single problem by just getting rid of it? So what's the next thing? We're going to get rid of all kitchen knives, get rid of all scissors, get rid of all heavy tools. It just makes no sense.
My tools and kitchen knives.
And then they're going to make all bricks made out of foam for future construction. Like, where does it stop? It doesn't make any sense. But this is the illogical component of it, to never wanting to deal with the real problems about what's going on. It's certainly been an interesting return after the long weekend here in Australia. I noticed for us where we are, Nicola, it is freezing cold. We've had a real cold snap going on, and I expect the same as in Victoria. Where the sniffles are abound. I hope you start to feel better soon. This is going to be a week of staying inside, maybe some cups of hot tea, some soup, and just trying to get back as soon as you can.
It's funny how sometimes, like, being sick knocks a bit of sense into you. You know, it sort of recalibrates you. It's like a reboot. And I know they'd probably like us all to, you know, as per their propaganda adverts, keel over and require an oxygen mask and be like, you know, Darth Vader it with our flu. We can't cope. You know, we need injections to help us, even though you don't vaccinate into a pandemic. But what it actually does for me is it creates clarity in the brain. And I've started looking at everything through a completely new lens. And it's scary. It's not good. I like to reverse out. I like to zoom out and see the bigger picture. And I realize a lot of this stuff is, quite frankly, pathetic. The efforts that they're making are pathetic. And the fact that they're being found out with all of the things that they are engineering, like a Hollywood screenwriter, but they're not as good as Hollywood screenwriters because they've failed in that important distinction of suspension of disbelief, because we're starting to see that it's all engineered. Anyway, thank you. I apologize that I've been sick today. Thank you so much for watching the Daily Australian. Hopefully I won't be quite so sick and foggy tomorrow. Myself, Nicola Charles, and my co-host, Jason Olbourne, we will do this all over again, minus the sniffles, hopefully, tomorrow.